Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. My name is Jean DiGiacomo. Some of you may know me. You may have seen my name on Facebook. I'm regular on there. But I'm the program director here at the GAR Hall. And we started the special events maybe 4 years ago. And we were on a roll, and then COVID hit. And then we went to Zoom. And during that Zoom period, we brought 24 programs and speakers from all over the country, free of charge to the community. I don't know if you saw any of those programs. I mean, we had some really cool people. One of my favorite, and I'll just have to tell you, I'm sure looking from the crowd, you all know who Vincent Price was. Yes, so we had Vincent Price's daughter who did a program. She was in, I think, Arizona at the time. She did a wonderful program all about his life. And I'd love to bring her back again, but we'll see. Anyways, we're glad to be back in person. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming up. I'm only going to keep you a couple minutes, just highlight some of them. Next Sunday at the Mossing Museum down on the Driftway, Jill West, who's here, she's one of our docents, and Bob Gallagher, the lighthouse keeper, are going to be doing informal talks on the Etrusco and the grounding of the Etrusco. Today was 67 years ago today. We were in the ground here in Scituate and kind of put Scituate on the map. Really did. A lot of things happened after that. Lots of people came down to the city to see it, and they decided to, you know. So anyways, that's next Sunday. Then we have, trying to think of this, I should have written it down. On April 13th, another Zoom. We're heading back into Zoom only because we've got a fabulous author from New Mexico. His name is Ron Franchel. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's written a book on the beginning of FBI profiling, how that actually started. If your criminal mind stands, the BSU, all that stuff, he has written a book on that. So if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see a sign up, go to our website, you can sign up, that is free. We ask for donations. So that will be the 13th. The 22nd, Earth Day, here in person. We're going to have an Earth Day event. We'll have Holly Hill Farm here, the Scituate Fishermen. Who else do we have? The Garden Club is going to be here. Acres to Grow Farm. We're talking with a few other organizations. And it's just going to be all about Scituate, what we can do, what's being done. It's going to be a great program. That you will have to, that's just a walk-in. You don't have to sign up or anything for that. And then, what's next? Oh, I'm sorry, we've got so much going on. Sally Snowden, some of you may know her. She is the lightkeeper at Boston Light, who will be retiring actually this year. She's going to come in and do a program for us in June.
That's the only manned lighthouse in the United States.
Yeah, the only manned lighthouse, and they're ending there. That's why she's retiring. So there you go. She probably would have. But anyway, she's a character. She's wonderful, and she's agreed to come in and talk to us. That's in June. In July, we're going to do a concert at the Mann House, an outdoor concert with the Rusty Skippers Band, if you know them. It's going to be a fun afternoon. That's going to be in conjunction with our open house that day as well. The Mann House and all the town historical sites will be open. So anyways, we've got lots going on. I just want to touch on a few things. Go to the website, go to the Facebook page, sign up for the emails, and you'll be in the know on everything. So, just a few housekeeping. If you've got a cell phone, please silence it at this time. Okay? Because I did hear a couple of pings here and there. Restrooms are through this door. There are 3 restrooms here. There's also an emergency exit here, to this side and to the back. There's no smoking. That's it, isn't it?
That's it, yeah.
I think that's it. So, without further ado, it's Bob Chessia, who is our president.
Let's see if I can get this. Oh, there we go. Okay. The Irish on the South Shore, I'm sure there's quite a few Irish here, if I'm not mistaken. Unbelievable, since we're the most Irish town in the country. Why is the South Shore the Irish Riviera? Obviously because of a large percentage of citizens of Irish ancestry. Why did the South Shore, and especially our towns? Just think of the Irish celebrations we have. I see Irish flags flying from many homes, especially now on St. Patrick's Day. We have parades against the market fair, Irish pubs, Irish music, and wearing of the green on all kinds of apparel. The first Irish were actually on the Mayflower, believe it or not. William Wallace and Christopher Martin, they arrived in 1620 on the Mayflower. 10 years later, about after the landing at Plymouth, the colonies were actually started. They were ready to go mode of fasting. The ship Lion, commissioned by an Irish merchant, landed in Nantasket carrying much needed provisions. So this was the day before they were going to fast. This actually could have been the first Thanksgiving. Immigrants in the 1700s were mostly Scotch-Irish Presbyterians who came here to escape religious persecution and hardships imposed on them by the British. By 1776, nearly 250,000 had come. They were quite often sent to the outer edges of the colony to act as a buffer between the Native Americans and the British colonies.
Excuse me, Bobby, could you just either closer to the mic or speak up a little?
Okay. Let's see. Later came the Irish Catholics. They were not well received, as a matter of fact. Jesuit priests had been banned from the Massachusetts colony in 1647 on the penalty of death. Does anyone recognize this guy? Chief Justice Cushing. He resided on the North River, was tutored by, believe it or not, an Irishman, Richard Fitzgerald, to prepare him for Harvard. Cushing was the judge in the Quackalacca case, which abolished slavery in Massachusetts. He cited the Massachusetts Constitution, which declared all men to be born free and equal. By 1790, Massachusetts had no slaves listed in the U.S. Census. Probably, I would say, maybe our most famous citizen. He did inaugurate Washington for a second term. He turned down the office of Chief Justice of the Supreme Court because of his health. He's buried in Scituate, and his wife is buried in Lowell for some reason. I don't know if they didn't get along, but. There we go. I'm going to thank John Sullivan for this. This is what happened to the Irish. In 1690, the penal laws designed to repress the native Irish were introduced. They first ordered that no Catholic could have a gun, pistol, or sword. Over the next 30 years, the other penal laws followed. Irish Catholics were forbidden to receive an education, to speak their native Irish Gaelic language, enter a profession, vote, hold public office, practice their religion, attend Catholic worship, engage in trade or commerce, purchase land, lease land, receive a gift of land from a Protestant, rent land worth more than 30 shillings a year, own a horse of greater value than 5 pounds, be the guardian to a child, educate their own children, or send a child abroad to receive an education. Edmund Burke, the famous historian, described the penal laws as well fitted for the oppression, impoverishment, and degradation of a people, and the debasement of them, of human nature itself, has ever proceeded from the perverted ingenuity of man. The Lord Chancellor was able to say the laws do not suppose any such person to exist as an Irish Roman Catholic. Thanks, John. Playwright George Bernard Shaw had this exchange in his play Man and Superman, Malone. My father died of starvation in Ireland in the Black 47. Maybe you've heard of it. Violent famine. Malone knows starvation. When a country is full of food and exporting it, there can be no famine. We all know who this is. He's not Irish, but Benjamin Franklin actually visited Ireland prior to the Revolutionary War. He saw the plight of the Irish, and he wanted to make sure it didn't happen in the colonies. Their plight was well known. On a local level, the North River, where over 1,000 ships were built, were also captained and crewed by men from this area. They witnessed the treatment of the Irish firsthand. While a lot of the early immigrants to America came to seek religious freedom, the Irish came to eat. The British, besides the penal laws, used other means to remove the Irish people. In 1600, Protestants owned about 10% of Ireland's land. By 1778, Protestants owned 95% of the land. When a Catholic landowner died, the estate was divided up equally among his sons, diluting its value. When a Catholic was behind in his payments to the wealthy landowners, they would have their crude homes torn down and be evicted, sometimes in the winter, and left starving by the side of the road. Many left Ireland in coffin ships, old slave ships, crammed into tight quarters, limited food and clean water, covered in vomit and excrement. It was not unusual for a quarter of the passengers to die in transit. Locally, on October 7, 1849, the brig St. John wrecked on the Grampus sledge in sight of Cohasset. 99 souls perished. This is from a newspaper. When the Irish landed in the United States, they were not welcomed by many. The opinion of the locals was that we weren't getting the best people, especially the Know Nothing Party, which also known as the Native American Party. This is from a newspaper in the 1850s. They were in favor of protection of American mechanics against foreign pauper labor. Foreigners having a residence in the country of 21 years before voting. Our present free school system carrying out the laws of the state as regards sending back foreign paupers as criminals. They were opposed to papal aggression and Roman Catholicism. Foreigners holding office, raising foreign military companies in the United States, and unreasonable the Jesuits being taxed for support of foreign paupers, millions of dollars yearly. They thought that at one point they were going to start the Roman Vatican in Cincinnati. This is like a conspiracy theory, like sometimes we see nowadays. Cartoon from a local paper. The Germans weren't neglected either. They didn't like them a whole lot. The party supported elimination of all Catholics from public office, among other things. It was also responsible for conspiracy theories about Catholic priests and nuns. People believed these conspiracies. Churches were burned. The Ursuline convent in Charlestown was burned to the ground in 1834. Catholics were supposed to come to America and overthrow the government. The Know-Nothings and anti-immigration and anti-Catholic policies eventually took a backseat to slavery. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to read this book. This talks about the first humanitarian mission from the United States. At that time, most countries, they were either engaged in trade or war. But with the plight of the Irish, Robert Bennett Forbes captained the USS Jamestown, which he got on loan from the government. It was filled with food and supplies, and it was sailed to Ireland. The largest share came from the Boston area, but it was actually, people contributed all around the country. Actually, Native American tribes in the West also contributed. It was,
basically put the United States on the map as a humanitarian country, which we still are today, to a large extent. These signs were quite popular. The Irish were only able to get menial labor jobs, digging ditches, track work on the railroads, and unskilled trades. However, they were found to be hardworking and dependable, and they slowly worked their way up the ladder. Many Irish immigrants joined the Union Army and fought in the Civil War. Their bravery was well documented. Now we come to Scituate, seaweed. This is why we are the Irish Riviera. The early Irish in Scituate and a lot of the South Shore can be tied to one man, Daniel Ward. He was born in Coleraine, Derry, Northern Ireland in 1809. He married in 1835. And in 1847, he was living in Scituate. When he came over, he did labor like most of the Irish. Later, he worked on a fishing schooner. Probably pulled into Scituate Harbor in a storm, perhaps, and looked and he saw a familiar seaweed growing on the rocks. He knew what it was, and he knew there was a market for it, and he moved his family to Scituate, and pretty soon he had a growing industry. This is the first house he lived on, Greenfield Lane.
What was his name?
Daniel Ward, W-A-R-D. This house was, he rented from Ephraim Young, who's actually one of my ancestors. He lived there for a very short while. And then he built this double home on Third Cliff. His partner, Miles O'Brien, died not long after moving there. So Daniel was left to manage the mossing industry and both families. More Irish came to moss, and by 1870, 100 families were listed as Irish mossers. Besides mossing, Daniel Ward salvaged goods from shipwrecks off the coast. On February 28, 1853, the Forest Queen ran aground at Third Cliff, right in front of Daniel Ward's house. There weren't a lot of homes there, so he was the one that got salvage rights. And he salvaged a lot of this valuable cargo. Chinese silk and porcelain, liquor, indigo, cochineal beetles, which are used to make red dye. You get red dye, it's either from cochineal beetle or from petroleum. Skins, and the ingots that are shown here. We had them assayed and they thought they were silver. Later found out that they were tin coated with silver, and we think maybe they were involved in the opium trade. And I think everyone knows you can't trust a drug dealer. With the money he made mossing and salvage rights, he built a house on First Cliff. The first Catholic Mass in Scituate was held in this house. At this time, First Cliff was not a great place to live. You couldn't get there. You had to go to Third Cliff, Pickety Beach, over Second Cliff, Doherty's Cove to get to First Cliff. Sometimes at low tide, you could actually walk across what's Old Dock Street. If you want to imagine why he was accepted in Scituate, it had to do with the fact that Scituate was a more tolerant place. We had the separatists in Plymouth, and we had the Puritans in Boston. They did not like a lot of people who didn't believe like they did. Scituate had always been a little bit more tolerant, and we had a famous citizen, James Cudworth, just to show what it was like. He let the Quakers meet in his barn. Then he was basically cut off from public service. King Philip's War, they needed a general. Cudworth was made a general, and he came back with good graces. We had a governor, Governor Prince, who wanted it against the law to smile at church, but it had Quakers on your property. However, much to his chagrin, another one of my illustrious relatives became a Quaker in the look of his dog. So what goes around, comes around. Those are some mosses. When you mossed, you didn't need a whole lot. You needed a boat, a rake, a beach to dry and process your moss on, and then a shack to store it in. This is a typical dory. The thing about dories is they are very easy to grow until you fill it with moss. Then you have to sit on it. But what happened was, with the Irish mosses, it drove the economy. People had to build these dories. They also had to build the mossing rigs. That's Tommy Stearns. Tommy Stearns would probably make 100 a year. He worked on the Grasshopper at Faneuil Hall. I live on Stearns Road in Old Forge Village, named after Tommy Stearns, and since he was a blacksmith, it's Old Forge. The first rakes were iron, so when you mossed, the moss would stick into you, you would have to pull it off. Later they were made of bronze, which we have one over here if you want to look at it later. And with the bronze rake, the moss didn't stick. You could actually shake it off and you could get a little bit more moss. When the dories returned from mossing, loaded, hopefully, creels would be brought to the beach and the moss would be forked into it and then spread out to dry on the beach. If you were a mosser, you had to watch the weather, because if rain, fresh water hit the moss, it would turn to mush and it was basically no good. So you would dry it, wash it in tubs, dry it again, wash it again, and bleach it. These people have, these mosses have got water, maybe from the ocean. If you were smart, but some of them did, they would dig a hole in the sand on the beach. When tide came in, it would fill a hole with water and have to carry this far. It was obviously backbreaking work. And you needed a mossing shack. We think the last one in existence is attached to the Maritime Irish Mossing Museum. This is what it would look like drying and processing moss. The moss in the foreground, that's the color of our straw. That's what the end result would be. And it was a family affair. The women were called the Red Petticoat Brigade, and I just found out 2 nights ago that was something in Ireland. The women wore red petticoats. And they would, while their husbands were mossing, they would process the moss on the beach. And like I said, always watching for rain. This is Doherty's Cove in between first and second clip. You can see the moss is almost ready to be sent to market. It's all amber colored on top of tops. Here's someone I know real well washing moss. That's my father. He did this pre-World War II. And there he is, in weighing moss. You see the lighthouse in the corner. So he mossed, I actually mossed myself. It was kind of a great job. You could actually pay for college back then, believe it or not. Now, men didn't just moss, there was also women. This is Miriam Min Flynn. She was often called the mossy queen. And to quote, she is the modern mossy miss. She doesn't, however, wear a red petticoat. Instead, she wears a pair of faded West Coast dungarees, cowboy-sized red rubber boots, and a sky blue sweater. Mossing to Mim is a cinch, and she's done it since she was 8. Equipped with a 17-foot mossing rake, especially made so she can get in among the small rocks. Mim sets out in a dory as the tide begins to ebb. She mosses for 4 hours, then rows to Conroy's Creek. Conroy was a big buyer of moss at the time. With at least 400 pounds, she has earned as much as $40 in one day, money she's putting away for her college education. I was in the museum one day, and we had a private tour when someone showed up, and I said, what's the private tour? He said, oh, I thought you were over. He said, do you have anything on Min Flynn? I said, actually, a whole wall to her. I found out later that was her son. So there she is again. After World War II, a lot of the veterans, they wanted lawns, bigger homes, a better school system, and they had access to mortgages down here that they couldn't find in the city, so they moved to the South Shore. So Mossing that was the first influx of Irish in Scituate. Citizen of the Year, Lucy Russo, or some of them used to call him Lucy Ann, he was the purchaser when I mossed. Obviously not Irish, he was French. He went to Wentworth. What he did was he industrialized the processing of moss. He had concrete beds with sprinklers that would spray salt water on the moss, dry it and bleach the moss and ship it to his buyers. He was a great guy, and he was also a big-time character. He had the right to go anywhere and collect moss, and the golf course didn't want. His truck looked like it should be condemned. He would drive on the side to go back and forth. It was like an old World War II cast-off. And the golf course didn't want him there because it looked like a wreck. So he said, I've got the right to come here. You can either drop the chain or drive it off over the green. So I'll drive the green. So when you moss, you row out of Scituate Harbor usually when I did it. And first clip, you can see there's not as many houses that run now. And you can see rocks. Moss has to grow on rocks. Second clip was a little farther row. That's second clip. And that's third clip. That was the farthest away, but it was where you could get a bigger load. And all three of the cliffs had significant Irish households. Right, Ray?
Yes.
If you were lucky, you could chip in for gas and you could get towed. This was how, usually when I went up, sometimes you rode, sometimes you get a tow. We would have sometimes a dozen doorways all tied up and basically shut down the channel in the harbor. I don't know if it would be very popular nowadays. There you can see, so you can imagine if you had a row sitting on top of that. And this is how Lucian did it. He had his machine, as you can tell, it looks like a wreck also, with a scale. So what we did is, my father used to, besides mossing, he was a lobsterman for a time, so he used to knit the heads for his lobster pots, so we knit the nets. And you would tie a slip knot at the bottom. Lucian would pick it up, they'd record the weight, and you'd pull it open and dump it into his truck. However, sometimes people put rocks in there trying to get a little extra weight. And Lucian could hear him hit the truck. So he would subtract or whatever, and he would always accuse us of throwing water on top of the moss before we weighed it, which we did. Why not? So when you go to moss, if you recognize, this is the fifth house on the right before the lighthouse. So that's Tommy Turner's house. His brother Jamie is the one that saved the lighthouse when his wife saw it going up for auction. They bought the lighthouse from the government. But you can't moss or fish when the wind blows northeast because it's just too rough. So Tommy Turner was what we call lazy. And he put a jug up there and he would wake up. And if the jug was whistling, he'd stay in bed because he was a little Quite a cat. Well, Scituate does have a lot of characters, so I'm sure we'll clear with that. This is a little newspaper article, and it talks at the bottom. Brewery's got most of the Irish moss. What it does, it clarifies the beer, it takes the haze up. So 2/3 of the crop went to the breweries. The rest went to food processing and medicinal purposes. This is how it's done today. This is probably in the Philippines. They make like a bed with salt water and they mow it like a lawn. Most of the Irish moss comes from other places, not Scituate. In 1998, the last load left Scituate. We had someone that thought he could process it with like industrial-sized washers and dryers, and it just didn't work. So that was the end of the mossing industry. we still have another character, Hawk Hickman, who I knew him as Paul before he changed his name and became a cowboy. But he does moss and process it. He was selling it to a company in Maine called Maine Colloids, who does process Irish moss. Found out he could get more money by selling it to a health food store. This is Jamaican Irish moss, which is used for respiratory. Some of the uses of Irish moss. Because it's a stabilizer, emulsifier, gelling, and fining agent. So it has a lot of properties that it does. I recently did a little thing at the Italy School on Irish moss. So I brought some in from the beach, I put it in salt water, they just looked at it, and I said, what do you think? You think you ever ate it? And they said, no. I said, well, I hope you brushed your teeth. It's used in toothpaste because it keeps it together. I said, what about ice cream? Do you like ice cream? I said, it has actually 72 essential nutrients in it, so it's actually good for you. So I told the kids, when you go home, tell your parents you want to stay healthy by eating ice cream. I don't know how that went over when they get home. There you go, the arrow, carrageenan, Irish moss. Here we go. Take the luck out of clear beer with Irish moss. You can buy it at brew warehouses at the bottom. And I was told that basically the last 15 minutes of the boil, you had Irish moss. Takes the haze out of your beer, clarifies it. Lager beer, that's what it was used for first. There we go. So the kids, the adults can enjoy it also. And there it is. And you can buy it on Amazon, obviously, among other things. Kim Kardashian actually puts it in her smoothies. Who knows? That might be, So, the second wave of Irish to Scituate were Thomas Lawson's estate, Dreamworld. The Portland Gale had pretty much wiped out a lot of the coast in New England. Scituate and other coastal towns were rebuilding, and in 1901, along came Thomas Lawson. He decided to build a summer home and a farm in the Egypt section of Scituate. He was out on a carriage ride with his wife. They stopped, she said, what a beautiful place. Of course, then all the trees had come down, you could see the ocean. And she was sickly, the ocean air was good for her, so like anyone would do, we went out and bought 350 acres right away and started a farm. Eventually, it was 1,000 acres with 60-something buildings. He hired 1,000 men, 200 teams of horses just to clear the property. He was told he could buy a farm for what he was spending. He said, anyone could buy a farm. I want to build my own. Now, Scituate's population at the time was 2,500, so this is 1,000 people just to clear the land. Whoop. Whoop. So, this is part of his estate. This is the show park. He also had a working farm. He hired Italians, Cape Verdeans, and Italians. Scituate at one time also had the largest Cape Verdean population per capita in the country. He had teachers, some of his workers couldn't speak English. He had teachers to teach them English, libraries and banks. When it was finished, he had about 200 men to take care of it. He had 200 horses, 200 dogs. His favorite dogs were bulldogs. And if anyone watched TV and saw what the new dog in America is, the French bulldog, Thomas Lawson was a big bulldog buff. and he was the first one to bring French bulldogs into the United States. His son Arnold eventually raised them. This is how he would go out for a ride. He had racing horses, which were trotters. He had show horses, ponies. Basically, he had everything. 3,000 birds, I think, at one time, cows. And this crew, Mr. Lawson is taking the reins, but usually he had Michael Glorious Kelly as his driver. Now, his first two horses were Gorgeous and Glorious, so after that, everyone was either named Glorious something or Gorgeous something. He also had a coachman, Billy O'Brien, and Patty McGinnis was the bugler. Lawson himself was Irish. This is Minot Beach. No Scituate Beach, right? Yeah. Okay, so when we talk about the Irish Riviera originally was Minot, just that section. That's where a lot of the Irish came in the summer. Of course, before air conditioning, we wanted a cool breeze. Oh, that one's out of place. There we go. And what do you think the most popular place in Minot was?
Good hotel.
You got it.
Now that's what is a minor. I rock up.
The other way, yeah. So, believe it or not, the most popular song at the Cliff Hotel was My Wild Irish Rose. The hotel was destroyed in 1974. It was later determined to be arson. The entertainers from the South Shore Music Circus often stayed there. Zsa Zsa Gabor, Sid Caesar, Edie Adams, John Carradine, Maurice Chevalier, Imogene Coca. Thomas Tip O'Neill and the Boston Bruins celebrated their 70, 71, and 70 through 73 Stanley Cup championships at the Cliff Hotel. I'm told that our Brazilian Junior has a photo of Bobby Orr in a tub of champagne. Obviously, the Irish Riviera was the place to be in the summer. Now, who else came? This guy, James Michael Curley. The Irish from Boston came to Scituate to summer in Minot, the Tobins, James Michael Curley, to name a few. They would frequent the Cliff Hotel, Scituate Cabins, the casino, Minot Light Inn, the yacht club, and the golf course, to name a few spots. Minot then was officially the Irish Riviera. Curley was known as the mayor to the poor. He also had a song written about him called The Rascal King. His home on Gannett Road proudly displayed shamrocks on the shutters like his house in Jamaica Plain. He was known to spend time playing golf at the Hadley Country Club. I was told that when they had entertainment at night, he would go up and he would shake hands with the band leader, and then he would make an announcement that the band was going to play on. So instead of stopping at 11, they would play maybe till 1 in the morning. And believe it or not, a lot of people met their wives there.
Did what?
Met their wives, wives, yeah. Oh, there he is. He was also governor. This is Maurice Tobin. By this time, the Irish realized that they could enact change from the ballot box. There was a lot of them, and they could all vote. So they elected Irish politicians, and these politicians took care of their own. This is Maurice Tobin, former mayor of Boston, governor and secretary of labor. He was a Democrat and a liberal supporter of labor unions, the New Deal, the Fair Practices Bill, which prohibited discrimination based on color, race, creed, and the national origin in hiring or promoting practices. He died in his home in Scituate in 1953. John Hines, he lived at 38 Wampatuck Ave, which is in the Sand Hills. Now, if you lived in Minot, you were Lace-Curtain Irish. If you lived in Sand Hills, you were Shanty Irish. And if you lived in Hyannisport, you were still Stocking Irish. So, look. Okay. So, while Curly was in jail, Tobin, believe it or not, he was in jail, and he ran for office. Yeah, he was in jail for 5 months. So, Tobin took over for him. When Curly was pardoned by President Truman, he made the statement that I have accomplished more in one day than has been done in the 5 minutes of my absence. This infuriated Hines, and he ran against Curly and defeated him, and he became mayor for 10 years, from 1950 to 1960. And we know who that is? That's his son, Jack Hines, the newscaster. So when you have a large summer population, you need a church. Here we go. And also in Sand Hills. And I'm sure you know who this is. This was a man that could raise money like no one else. He played on Irish Kilt. He would attend the church in Minot, and he would get up and he would say, you guys are playing golf, you're boating, playing tennis, sunbathing, so on and so forth. And then he would go on to describe all the Catholic charities that needed money. I was told that he had like a casket with big cups. When he walked down the aisle, they'd be sticking money in there. And unbelievable. But he did raise a lot of money. You know who's on the left? Who's on the right? Does anyone recognize him? Sonny McDonough. He was one of the more colorful Irish politicians. Maybe second only to James Michael Curley. They lived on Second Cliff. He didn't want to be associated with the Lace-Curtain Irish of Minot. He was known for his quick wit and political power. He was on the governor's council, and he would basically be in charge of appointing almost every judge in the state. But he had a few quotes. Mike Chronicle used to love to interview because he always had something funny to say. He's the one that came up with a quote, you could screw up a 2-car funeral. Sonny, he was a fundraiser for Cardinal Cushing. He also helped Hines' successful run for mayor, JFK. And he also was known for the shortest campaign speech, which said, remember me. And people did. He had a job at, I believe, an electrical plant, and he made extension cords, and he had access to red light bulbs. So, election time, he would have his poll workers go around, and if they saw any house with a red light bulb, knock on the door and ask them if they voted. And he went in Key Marathon in Florida. One year he actually had competition. Someone ran against him, and they said, yeah, you're in Florida, and we're up here. And he made a statement. He said, I can be back here in the time it takes you to run a marathon. So, Sonny won the election, and what does he do? He gets up, he reaches in his pocket, and he pulls out his plane tickets for Florida. Sort of rubbed it in his face. Now, the third wave of Irish happened 67 years ago today, the Etrusco. That landed at the lighthouse. Bill's Lunch, which is a funny story. Bill's Lunch, he figured he could sell soda and sandwiches and so on and so forth, and the town said, you can't do it, it's a restaurant. It's a truck. It's a restaurant. It doesn't move. He had a little cord with a button, he pushed the button, he would lurch forward. He was in business until Thanksgiving when they finally got rid of him. This is what you would see on weekends. We would have perhaps 30,000 people come to see the Etrusco. And you have to think back then, we had channel 4, 5, and 7. Nothing else to do, people would go for a ride. That's when you went for a ride in your car, so you could go down and see the Etrusco. What happened was, they drove around Scituate, they liked what they saw, they moved here, and within several years, the Scituate's population doubled. You know, that actually has a lantern along it, which we're hoping to get put back soon. Hopefully this summer. In 2016, we hosted our sister city, West Cork. We did a bus tour of the Irish, showing the delegation our Irish roots. We did the Maritime Irish Mossy Museum, the Lighthouse, Curly's House, and we're better to end than at a pub. We went down to the galley down the harbor. And if you look in the middle, that's the mayor for the St. Patrick's Day Parade. And if you look in the back, we have an ex-mayor, Jeannie.
Yeah.
Where are you, Jeannie?
2012, Mayor.
2012, yes. So, what's better than lunch, Guinness, and Irish songs? We know who this is, right? So you can't, well, I believe he has a great voice. He really does. This is taken from the Easter Rising Monument Committee. I didn't copy all of it, but in the spring of 1916, a group of Irishmen and Irish women knew that the time had come to end 750 years of foreign occupation. It was that government that sold tens of thousands of men, women, and children into slavery in the 1600s. It was the government that acted the penal laws in the 1700s, preventing the native Irish from owning land, voting, receiving an education, owning a firearm, and practicing their faith. It was the same government that permitted over 1 million men, women, and children to starve to death, while the plentiful harvests were exported out of Ireland, guarded by soldiers. The years of the Great Hunger, 1845 to 1852, were those of genocide against the native Irish people. On Easter Monday, April 24th, 1916, the Irish volunteers commandeered the General Post Office in Dublin, and for 6 days held out in strategic locations around the city against the artillery, soldiers, and gunship of the British. When finally the leaders were tried by secret court trial, each signatory of the proclamation was shot by a firing squad and killed in jail. The Easter Rebellion was the catalyst that broke the chains of foreign occupation, ultimately resulting in Irish freedom. Ireland was the first country after America to fight for and win its battle for freedom from England. I went online and looked, and I think the most popular holiday in the world is Independence Day for Great Britain or England. You'd be surprised how many countries celebrate it. We have in Scituate the only memorial to the Easter Rising. Here's my good friend John Sullivan. John and Brenda O'Connor have major roles in the creation of this memorial. Let's see. There's John, Bill Keating, Karen Connolly, someone who I forget his name, and we call him the Big Red Stick. He's the Ancient Order of Hibernians. He's the ex-president, and he's quite a character too. This is Irish Consul General Louise Moore. She's visited Scituate many times by herself or with her family. And this is the Irish, actually he's the ex-Irish ambassador, he got transferred, Daniel Mulhall. When he was here, we took him on his tour. We went to Lawson Tower, and he got to play when Irish eyes are smiling with the chimes. Oh. And I told him that Lawson Tower was built by an Irishman, for an Irishman, Charles Logue built Boston Tower, also built Fenway Park, along with churches at the Holy Cross and Boston College. When you're the most Irish town in America, you have a parade. Now, if you look in the center of the picture, you'll see a guy with a tall hat and beard. That's one of my friends from the railroad. For 15 years, he would lead this parade and he would stop and ask when my wife was. Because guess when her birthday is? St. Patrick's Day. One year he told her he was going to give her a break, he broke his foot, and he probably got in a golf cart. So now he's moved to Florida. She's got a little bit easier. But yeah, this originally started in Minot. It became too big, so it had to move. And it will be, hopefully, successful like always. This is the Maritime Irish Mossing Museum. It's open Sundays from 1 to 4. It's a great take. It's not just Irish mossing, it's everything you can think of, really, pertaining to the ocean. Lighthouses, mass humane, shipbuilding. Well, we were told that we weren't being sent the best that Ireland had to offer. The truth is that we became better and stronger because of our.